Howdy, howdy. All right. I think, yeah, we've got a good amount of people, so we can go ahead and start getting in here. All righty. So today we're talking about SQ streaming, where really streaming and everything that kind of revolves around streaming, like the mix and all that other stuff, it could be like a 3-hour or full day course just by itself. But today I'm going to kind of walk you through how to set it up, the different settings inside the SQ that we really need to pay attention to, what programs we can use. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I'm going to make maybe the most important slide is really what we should be paying attention to, the little pitfalls, what we should be watching while we are streaming, period, but as it pertains to SQ. Okay, so I always get lots of questions about SQ, so I'm sure lots of you guys have them or use them or come into contact with them a lot. How many of you guys have used SQ or streamed or multi-tracked audio or anything like that? You can use your voice if you'd like, or you can type in the chat. Either is fine. Yep, getting a yes from Brent. It's a very, the SQ is actually, maybe, yeah, I'll go ahead and say it. The SQ is probably a very secretly extremely powerful little console because it has the S-Link port, which is our intelligent port. So it allows sample rate conversion and connection to all of the Allen and Heath kind of ecosystem, as well as other consoles. So we have that, plus we have the ability to have audio networking with things like Waves, SoundGrid, or with Dante. But then we also have multiple USB ports, multiple ways we can connect via USB with the SQ console. So that's really kind of, I think, why a lot of people end up picking SQ for things like small broadcast rigs or even larger broadcast rigs, doing the stream mixing for houses of worship, or even smaller tours. The SQ is just kind of has so much stuff in a little package that it just ends up being a huge bang for your buck. So that's my professional opinion why it gets picked. Okay. So, I stream on Allen and Heath every weekend. Amazing. Yes. And yep, William, we're talking about SQ today. Because remember, this semester is all what you guys wanted to hear. So you guys wanted to know more about SQ streaming. So here I am. All righty. I'm going to close the chat. So I'm going to be missing that for just a couple of minutes. Okay. So let's kind of hop in here. So setup, this would be what I would consider maybe the best setup. I'm going to show you 3 different scenarios, and they all have their pros and cons on why we would use them. It's really up to you, but I will just present them based on my personal and professional opinion. So the best setup for the SQ. So if you look on the back, you'll see right next to the network port, we have a USB plug, USB 2.0. That it looks kind of like a little house. That is called USB-B. The USB port that we're all kind of used to looking at is called USB-A. So that little house looking port is USB-B. So we can use that to plug into pretty much anything that will accept a USB input or output. So we'll go there, and let's say that we take that USB cable and we can just plug it into a computer of some kind. It could be a laptop, it could be a PC, again, anything that can accept kind of USB information. So when we do it this way, when we go through the USB-B on the back and plug it into a computer, it actually is seen and noticed by the computer as being an audio device. Just like a recording interface would, or a webcam would. Those are devices. This is an audio specific one. And when we do it this way, we have a 32 by 32 interface, which means we can send out 32 channels over that USB-B port, and we can receive 32 as well. If you have a Mac, if you're plugging this into a Mac, you don't need any drivers. This is one of the magical things that I love and appreciate about Macintosh computers is that you can just plug it in and the Mac's like, oh yeah, I know what this is, and instantly recognizes it, and it's very easy to set up. If you have a PC or you're running Windows, a couple extra steps for you. You can go to the Allen and Heath website and the SQ landing page. You can go to software and you can download the drivers specifically so that now the PC will recognize, oh yeah, this is the SQ. I know what this is. I know what to do with it. So that's very important. So the second option would be Dante. If you have a Dante card, and actually I should have gotten a little picture with the Waves sound grid card as well. I just already had this one locked and loaded. But you could do Dante or Wave sound grid this way. So you can see at the bottom, we've got our little Dante card. You can imagine the yellow and black Wave sound grid card. But essentially, this is a way that we can multi-track audio or stream audio using a third-party audio networking. And this particular picture is Dante. So then instead of using a USB cable, we would actually use a CAT cable. And we will connect that to our computer. And you can do things, again, Wave sound grid, they used to use Tracks Live. If you can see up by my head over here, my computer is in fact running that live. Move my mouse a bit. I'm running Tracks Live and they can pry it from my cold dead hands. I use that, but that used to be what Waves recommended. I think they recommend Reaper now. If you were using Dante, you can use, again, any program, and we'll get into this in a second, that will recognize a USB sort of audio device. So when you're using Dante Virtual Sound Card, it's 32 by 32 at 96K, or you can have 64 by 64 at 48. The Waves sound grid card does not have the same constraints. You can do the full 64 at 96 with the SQ console as well. So it all kind of depends on what protocol you're most familiar with or what you prefer using. They're all different. People have different opinions on if one may sound a certain way over another. I'm not here to say that. That's totally going to be up to you guys. I recommend just testing it or giving it a listen. Dante's fine. Wave sound grid is fine. I prefer using the USB be out on the back, but it is there. And there's a third/fourth option that we haven't talked about, and that is going to be my I just labeled it different because I have set things up this way, not on the SQ, but on other consoles who are far less reliable. And that would basically be taking 2 XLR outputs off of the console. They'd probably be an auxiliary output, so you can have a special mix just for streaming, and putting that into an interface and having the interface run over USB into the computer. Was somebody have a question or anything like that? Okay. I think I'm just hearing things. I'm just going crazy. That's all right. Okay, so yes, you can go just straight from the XLR into the interface, and then the computer acts the same way as it would if you use the USB B port on the back of the SQ, as in, oh yeah, this is an audio interface. This is an audio device. I can see that, and I'm going to use that now. Now there are a couple of key differentials when doing this different way. Make sure I click on there. So when you come out of the console over XLR, it's being converted. And if you go right into another interface, that's another conversion. So you're having lots of different conversions here, which may or may not be audible or detrimental. The phrasing is kind of delicate. It's more variables. I'll just say that having more sample rate conversions means you're going to have more variables, and that's more to look out for. But on a couple plus side, you do have outside volume control. So instead, having to always necessarily look at a fader or watching that level, you have 2 separate level faders that perhaps the person running the stream can just reach over and adjust, like, oh, this isn't enough, or I need a little bit less, things like that. This also means that you can have longer runs via XLR. When you connect things with a USB cable, we are confined to the restraints of the USB protocol, which I believe is probably, I think it's like 25 feet. And so it's not recommended that you run USB longer than that. So if you needed a longer run, Dante and Waves, you can run 100 meters or 300 feet easily. And then with XLR, you can run that. I think it's recommended to about 100 feet or 150. Once you start getting to 200 feet, you start getting a lot of interception from RF and things like that. So RF and electromagnetic energy. So you can do that. But also when you do it this way, it's less processing on the computer, as in you're not asking the computer to do much. The interface, the little in this picture is Focusrite 2i2, is really doing the heavy lifting here. And so when you're just sending over to the computer, it's really only seeing, especially in this scenario, it's only seeing 2 audio feeds. Or if it's, I have a 6i6 down here that I've used for many years, that only has 6 inputs and 6 outputs to look after. So just something to keep in mind. If, again, you're adding more variables, so that gives you some more control, but it's also some more stuff to worry about. So you're going to have to kind of balance that out, which is why the most straightforward, the easiest way is just using that USB-B on the back of the SQ, because that's really plug and play, throw and go kind of scenario. All right, let me check the chat to see if there's any questions so far. And I'll also audibly ask, does anybody have any questions about what I've said or explained thus far? I want to make sure everything's good here before I hop onto the next slide. Okay. Silence is acceptance. All right, so your settings. So when you're inside of your SQ, there's a couple of things that you need to check and make sure of first. We're going to go to setup, audio, and USB, and we'll see how this looks over here. This is going to be a weird camera angle. It looks like a portrait on my phone. Does that look legible to everybody? I won't make you stare at it if you can't see it. And you can always, I can even spotlight myself. So maybe that helps. But we want to go to setup, audio, and USB, and we need to make sure of a couple of things. So let me hop over there. You'd think with my 900 cameras, I could get all sorts of views. Okay, so setup, gonna go to setup. And you guys can still see I have my pip going in the top, I guess it's for you, top right of my Multitracks playing on Tracks Live. Okay, so we're on setup, audio, and then we're over on USB. We need to make sure and pick which USB mode we're on. And you have 2 options. You can do USB-B, which is going to be that port on the back. And then we also have SQ drive, which is going to be that thumb, that key drive, however you'd like to phrase it, on the front of the console. Right, I think it's right over here, just off shot here. So we will want to do USB-B. That's what I'm plugged in right now. And the other really, really key point here is making sure that we're choosing our sample rate. So this was an excellent, amazing addition on one of the latest firmware updates, was that we are now able to change how we want our USB sample rate to function. So if you don't want to take up as much space on your thumb drive or on your hard disk, you can change it to 48. It will be, the files will be 1/2 the size. If you want to keep the full resolution, you can keep it at 96. What's great about this is that when you're doing it in the opposite direction, I don't have to convert every single one of my tracks to 96 to work. Sometimes I just have old recordings that are in 48 and I want to use them and play with them. And now I can do that easily without having to spend 45 minutes or however it is long to actually convert everything over. So super key. And when you're done, you gotta make sure you always hit apply. When you hit apply, you gotta make sure you know what you're doing, because it will actually disconnect momentarily. So that's why I say make sure you do this first, because if you need to change this, especially your sample rate, you got to make sure that's good to go. So USB-B, 96K, perfect. And again, your sample rate should also, above and beyond all of the key points of being able to switch out, I'll make you guys look at me again, being able to switch your sample rate, is that it should match whatever program you're going to use. Now, most DAWs or digital audio workstations, Tracks Live, Pro Tools, Reaper, Cubase, Ableton Live, you should be able to change all of those sample rates, but we just want to make sure that they are the same number. In fact, when you don't match them, so like let's say I had my Tracks Live up here in the corner running at 48 and I had my SQ on 96 and all the content was 96, they actually won't be able to connect with each other. Sometimes they will let you connect on certain programs and it will sound very not correct. And sometimes they will not let you connect at all. It says, hey, we can't find it or we can't connect to it because it's not looking for the right thing. You will know if you have a mismatched sample rate because it will sound hilarious. It'll be like just a little too fast, and the pitch will just be, a few cents up, and it will feel weird. And I've done mixed competitions and stuff with people where, sometimes you just accidentally forget to do that, and weird stuff happens. It's really funny, but just make sure it's only funny if it's not you. I guess I'll say that. So make sure your sample rates are matching. The other key point on this slide is that if you want to go to utility and SQ drive, and I'll hop back over there. Booyah. Go over there. Utility, SQ drive. I already got this stuff selected for myself. We can change, and this is SQ drive. So this is going to be the thumb drive on the top of the console. I can pick between either I'm on the stereo section right here. I can either play back a stereo recording or record a stereo recording to my thumb drive, which is great if you wanted to just get like a 2-track mix down of the front of house mix. Like, hey, I just want to listen to this later and see how it came out, or for somebody to just spot check later, things like that. Or you can hit multi-track, and now you can record or play back multi-tracks. And for those of you that don't know multi-tracks, I suppose I should have defined this earlier. It is multiple tracks. So it'd essentially be like if you wanted to record a full band and you wanted the drum to have its own track, the snare to have its own track, every singer to have their own track, the guitars to have their own track, that's multi-tracking. We can do that right onto the thumb drive with this. And I can either play back or record through this. Sometimes if you get to visit us at one of our conventions or the conferences, and we've got demo units, some of our great dealers and our great reps also have these set up. They'll have a little thumb drive going in the SQ drive, and it'll have the full multi-tracks playing through that. It's actually quite powerful. Again, there's so much you can do with SQ. And I'll go back to my face. Okay. Got a lot of messages. So let me go ping those in really quick. Any questions so far? Are we able to get multi-track through the thumb drive and USB-B at the same time? They can function simultaneously, yes. However, their patching is the same. So you would have to want them to be the exact same in order for both the SQ drive and the USB-B to function at the same time. So just keep that in mind, patching. The SQ won't play back 44.1 files from the USB drive. I'm not sure, actually, Marty, because I think the playback of a stereo track, that's a very good question. I'll have to find out, Marty, specifically about the stereo playback, because the SQ drive won't play back 44.1 multi-tracks for sure. It's stereo track, I'm not sure though. William says, I find SQ drive can be a little finicky for sure sometimes, and that really comes down to the thumb drive itself. We have there are thousands of USB key drives. And I found one that has worked rock solid every time. And so I just use those all the time now. I once bought a small handful of them for very cheap. I'll pull it out at the end of this and try to get the name for it because it's worked great. Also, the Allen and Heath community on the forums, they have a running list of tried and true USB thumb drives that work as well. So.
Well, what I ran into on Saturday was it was a 7-piece band, and the guy says, "Can you record multi-track for me on my external hard drive?" And I said, "Sure." So he brought it. I plugged it in, and it said needs to be formatted. So I formatted it, and then when they began to play, I armed it, and then I hit record, and it would not record. It would not go into record. It just kept saying armed, 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 pause, and so. I'm running out of time here, so I ripped it out, put in my hard drive, and started recording for him. So that's there's been always finicky things. Trying to play back a track, you get that track, the playback, then you try to play a different track and it plays the first track again, or you play a different track and it plays a different track, totally different. So I gave up on trying to use it for playback. Now, I don't know if that's been corrected. I haven't tried that for a long time, but you have to really, what I'm saying in short is make sure you know what's working before you go out to the gig, because you'll be
Always.
surprised.
Always. Yeah, no, that would be scary to me if they just said, "Hey, record on this," and I'd be like, "Okay," like that. There's always risk to that. I hear you, William, and I would be curious to see if you got a chance to test it again and get back to me. USB thumb drive. I mean, they're just. I've had occasions before where I've had to format the USB drive. Just like really did not want to take this formatting. Like I had to reformat the USB drive like 3 times. And then finally it was like, oh, this is what you want. Cool, I've got it. And then it was great from then on. But it's that testing and making sure that's just part. It's just darn thumb drives. People, you can also record, not even beyond thumb drives, you can also do like hard disks, although I really recommend solid state. Nobody should be using the hard disk anymore with the disk turning in them. The solid state drives are really, we've had them too long now, and they're super affordable at these days. Okay. Did you format? Yep. Oh, somebody's talking to you, William. Will the SQ, oh, I already did that. When using Dante, apart from Dante controller, what else is needed? Excellent point. You will need Dante virtual sound card to get that to work. So Dante virtual sound card is essentially a way for the computer to say, act as kind of like a Dante interface for the computer to say, oh yeah, I see the Dante, I'm going to connect to it now. You can pick the sample rate, you can change how many channels you'd like to do, but you'll need Dante virtual sound card. And I believe it's $30 American, 30 US freedom bucks for that, for a license. So not too bad. I have one on one of my computers for just that kind of scenario. When I've already got a full Dante network totally set up, like it's perfectly fine to just keep using that. And also, William, to kind of piggyback off of what you had just said, I also pretty much always prefer to go out the USB-B out to my laptop, because I am mitigating any risks that I dropped my thumb drive at some point and it freaked out. Like it's just, to me, it's sturdier in the way that it's not, I have less chances. If my computer's corrupt, I'm going to know. If my thumb drive is corrupt, I have no idea. I won't know until it's way too late. So, alrighty. So I will exit out of there for right now. We'll go on to the next one. USB-B multitrack. Okay. All right. Let's hop back over here. And I apologize for not being able to make it super jumbo. I would go into a big spiel about my, like, where I can set up a camera. It's on a little like boom stand right now. So thank you for bearing with me. Okay. So I will go over here. And that's also why I have the instructions written out on the slide. So you guys can go in and play with it at your will. Okay, so USB-B multitrack. So we're going to go to IO. So let's say we've got everything set up. We know how I'm using USB-B. I want to do it this way. I've kind of got an idea. I've already checked my sample rate. I've already done all these things. The next step is going to be actually patching it. So if you go to IO, you're gonna want to use either tie lines or outputs. Now, a super special, awesome prize for somebody who can tell me the difference between regular outputs and tie lines, who does not work for Allen and Heath or American Music and Sound. Bonus special brownie points.
Highline just groups the gangs the outputs together, right?
Say that again.
It gangs the channels together.
Nope, not quite. You're very near it, though. You are near it. You are lukewarm, as they might say. Room temperature, maybe. Dustin says tie lines take the input sockets directly to the output. Yep. Okay, Dustin, that is almost like to the T what that is. So the big difference between outputs and tie lines means that outputs are being processed or used somehow in the SQ. It may be direct outputs or buses, like William said, or it might be effects, how you might consider any output on the console. Now, tie lines are directly pulled from the socket. They circumvent all of the processing. It doesn't take any of the SQ processing away. And it's basically a way to pull from one and send to another without having to do anything to it. You can do these for a couple of different reasons. I really prefer to use tie lines when I do multi-tracking, so that when I play them back, I am getting as raw as I can possibly get from the inputs and the musicians and all the mics and stuff. I want to get it as close to raw as possible, and tie lines are going to let me have that. And again, it's not touching any of the processing on my SQ. So whatever I may be doing at the time, my recording is going to, like, let's say I had some like really crazy EQ on my kick drum because things were being weird and I had to do whatever it took to make the mix work. We've all been there. If I use tie lines, that imprint is not going to be in my recording. It's going to be more raw. It's going to be more naked, however you might like to phrase it. It's going to be untouched about the weird thing I had to do at the venue or in the situation. And I love tie lines for that. Again, it's just an easy way to pull from one. Maybe I'm pulling with that. Maybe I'm pulling from, there we go. Maybe I'm pulling from Dante and I just want just the raw Dante. I don't want to have to go through a fader and an EQ and all the other stuff. I just want to pull right from it. I can do that with tie lines. Tie lines are a super special secret sauce that more people should use. Okay, so then again, the outputs are going to be those like effects outputs, buses, direct outputs, things like that. So let me go back to this little patch screen here. Okay, so I'm in my IO, and like I said, I prefer to do tie lines this way. And again, I'll also make note that this is outputs coming out of the console. So this would be for multi-tracking. If this was specifically streaming, I would probably do just a 2-track USB, and that would also be outputs. It kind of depends on, you have to almost invert it in your brain a little bit, like, okay, I'm sending this out, but it's actually an input for my computer, that kind of thing. Okay, so IO, I can do tie lines or I can do output, and I'll even click on these and you can see I can have my monitor outs and patch those someplace weird, my rack effects, my mix outs, which will be my groups, and my auxes as well, and my input direct outs, which are going to be, depending on where you choose your pick point at, maybe, post the preamp or post dynamics or EQ, depending on how you've had it set up. But the big point is, we're starting down here on the left, and where we want it to end up will be up here up top. So if I wanted to do, a multi-track recording, or I wanted to do something like that, I could do tie lines, and I need to make sure I've selected USB, so that when I go in to patch them, and you can patch them however you'd like, whenever I go in to patch them, I am in fact sending it out to USB. Very important. Okay, hop over there. Back to the slides. I need my colleague, I believe Pat, has a wireless mic, and I needs one of them, because sometimes I'm doing a lot of moving back and forth, and I got to carry this very beautiful but large stand-in microphone. Okay, so we want to make sure we get our patching correctly. So we've set our sample rate. We've made sure all that's good. We've decided on how we want to get it there. We've patched it, so we should be getting stuff. Now what? Where can I plug this in at? Like, if I've got it into the computer, so now what? So there's a few programs. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of OBS, which is Open Broadcast Software, and that is free, totally open source software that you can use to stream. A lot of churches use it. Gamers, for those of you guys that are on Twitch or anything else, do stuff like that. I've done OBS for lots of things. You can do really interesting programming, really powerful programming with OBS. It's just a little bit computer intensive. Scared myself for a second. I was seeing a lot of fader movements because I had patched some stuff on my Avantis. Whew, I'm having a day, guys. All right, so we got OBS, and we've got Tracks Live, which you can see floating near my head over here. This is Tracks Live, and again, I will stop using it. Never. So Reaper is also a great option. Any DAW, I've also got Pro Tools that I use for editing stuff, and that can all work with it. Again, the whole point is that can the software see an audio interface or a USB audio interface? which is going to be, all the way from Audacity all the way up through industry standards like Pro Tools. Although word on the street is that Audacity shouldn't be used anymore. So vMix is another great option. I see those a lot in houses of worship who are trying to do their own version of broadcasting. It's a different version of OBS, and I believe you pay for it. Let me open this. All right, somebody asked, what is Tracks Live? So Tracks Live is this free program. Boop, here, I'll even make it gigantic for you. How about that? Let me turn that off. We'll go here. There we go. This is Tracks Live. I'm just going to sit here and preach about how much I love it, and they stopped supporting it. So it's a program that lets you record or play back many different tracks of audio simultaneously. It uses very, very little computer processing. It was free to download. I think that the latest OS, the last OS that they stopped working with was we're into like national parks at this point. I think I have Catalina on this Mac, and it's running. But then they stopped supporting it. So like Big Sur, you can't have Big Sur and use Tracks Live, but it's by Waves. It's free. You can still download it right now. And I can record and play back many tracks of audio easily without burdening my computer. So that's what that is. Bill said not use Audacity. Yeah, Audacity 3 came out in the last like week or two or recently. And it's like a really big, there's a huge security problem. Like it's tracking everything you're doing on your computer. It's really messed up. You'll have to go read some stuff on it, but that's been the word on Reddit. So I can't say go get Audacity because I don't know if I trust it anymore. Dustin says Tracks Live is literally the best ever. Yeah, okay, good till 10.14. So if you're running Mac OS, it's 10.14. Waves does work. Waves Tracks Live specifically does work with PC, as does all of this stuff on my slide. OBS Tracks Live, those all should work with PC. As far as which version of Windows you're using, you'll have to check with the manufacturer. PC compatible right for Tracks Live. Yeah, it should be. Might just stay away. Yep, we have enough security problems on the internet as is. And then Brent asks, does it work with Presonus Studiolive? That I'm not sure about, Brent. I have to lean into probably no, and I'm just taking a wild guess here because Presonus makes their own console that they may only let their own consoles connect to it. But I don't know, it could absolutely work if you're allowed to pick some third-party other audio device under the USB settings or something like that, then absolutely, yes, you can use it. Let's see. Studio One will work with anything. Great. I guess I have a lot of this. It's like the most comments I've gotten in one of these. This is fun. I'm glad to see everybody we're having fun with this topic. Okay. Dustin paid for something free. That's not good. I hate that. Okay. All right. So you can use any of those programs. And again, the really big key point is being that it can accept a USB device. If I fly back over here, I can even open up my settings and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. It may be a little bit small, so I'll just hit Command. Let's see if I can get it to show up. Oh, yeah, I need to stop playing. Funny how it doesn't want me to change things while it's running. Okay, so this is just the preferences, and I can actually pick what interface I want to use. So, and this may be difficult to read, so I'll just read it to you guys. I've got SQ audio, which is how the SQ console shows up on my Mac. I've also got my built-in ins, my built-in outs. I can also use my HDMI if I wanted to do that, but SQ audio is just fine. And I can also choose easily if I wanted to do a stereo out or a multi-tracks out. I'll hit OK. And you can see way up here, I've got a transport. I've got a loop on right now, so it's just playing lots of audio for me. But I can choose to just record a stereo if I want super easily, or I can do the recording of the multi-tracks. Again, Tracks Live is just a really beautiful program, and it's upsetting that they stopped supporting it. All right, go back to here. Let's see. There's also a paid version of Mixbus for sure. vMix is great. Just need a powerful PC. Yep, that sounds about right. That's always the thing, is when you start using a software to do things, especially heavy lifting like video stuff, the quality of your PC suddenly matters a ton. When you are offloading it, when you use like a console and it's doing all the audio stuff for you, and you're just sending a 2-track out, the computer's just like, it's like nothing to the computer. But when you start doing a bunch of video stuff and live streaming all simultaneously on the same computer and like Pro Presenter, it takes a lot of work for your little computer to work on. Okay, moving along. I want to be conscientious of everybody's time. So finally, let's talk about what we need to look out for. First big one, in case you haven't heard me say it already, sample rate. We need to be careful of our sample rate. If we're not checking that again, it will sound hilarious and incorrect, and it's only funny if it's not happening to you. The second big one is going to be clock sync. This is really big if you are connecting consoles together, or if you're sending audio, it like has lots of different points. There needs to be a master clock or a primary clock. And that's basically setting and again, this could be an entirely separate mini masterclass on just clock sync. But basically what happens is when we create or use digital audio, we need to have an exact starting point, and everybody needs to follow that exact same starting point, because when those aren't perfectly aligned, things start getting weird. You end up getting a lot of jitter, which is a lot of very, very low level distortion and like noise, basically. And we want to basically kind of mitigate that. Having a wrong clock sync can also be shown, or heard rather, as like these little clicks and pops periodically. And if you're not listening for it, it can be easy to miss. But I've definitely had my share of, I got too excited, I started doing stuff and I forgot to set my clock. And then I have clicky audio, or I have, you can hear that very tiny distortion. And this is, I think for most people in most scenarios these days, the technology, that jitter or that like clock sync kind of error noise is happening like over 100 decibels down from the signal. But that, again, that's a different conversation. So, but it is something that we need to keep track of. So like my whole setup here, I've got my computer, which I'll put there. Woohoo. I've got my computer running my Multitracks, and that's sending audio over via USB to my SQ5. I need to make sure that my SQ5 is aware of what's happening, and my clock sync is coming from the USB cable. It's looking for it there. But if I start throwing audio like over to my Avantis or to my D-Lab or to my HM64, I have to make sure on those consoles, like where they're receiving the audio, like they would be getting it from the S-Link port or through the Gig Ace port. I need to make sure I tell each of those consoles, say, hey, you need to look for the clock in this port. Don't follow your own, don't because it will be mismatched. So that's just an important point. Other important things about streaming specifically that are not SQ especially, but just it's good to know in general, is our LUFS, which is loudness units full scale. This is essentially, LUFS is like how it feels. I talked to a gentleman once, and he described it to the feels like part of temperature in weather reports, like, oh, it's 94 today, but it's humid, so it feels like 103. The feels like 103 is LUFS, and that's kind of how streaming platforms like YouTube and Facebook and all those other places kind of dictate how the audio is compressed and decompressed. So very roughly, and each platform has their own requirements, some have none listed, is about -14 LUFS. You can get the Ulean loudest meter. It's free. You'll have to essentially put it in between your audio path or as a copy of your audio path. Like one way you could do it is if I was streaming out of my laptop and I was just using OBS to do it, I can use Ulean on one as a plugin, either in OBS or into my DAW, and actually kind of meter how loud it feels. So just somebody talking is not going to feel very loud, but a whole band with lots of low end is going to feel very loud. And I wrote here, if you're going to lean quiet, because if you go too loud on your stream, I do not trust YouTube or Facebook to compress my audio file with the highest quality, or for them to care at all, really. So I would much rather them have to boost up the signal a little bit, or have the person at home watching or on their device turn it up a little bit, rather than just saying, YouTube will take care of it, because they won't. I mean, they'll take care of it because they have to, but it's going to be totally obliterated. It's going to be ugly. So if you're going to lean it in a direction, lean a little bit quiet while you're streaming. And also dynamics are a really key point, which kind of go with the LUFs. Unfortunately, unlike with live venues where dynamics are wonderful and beautiful, and even in recordings, those dynamics like help make music emotional. It's one of the dimensions to music. We cannot have that as much in when we're streaming, because again, it has to do with how we're sending the information over the internet, how it's being compressed, how it's being decompressed and presented back to the listener or the consumer. And so we have to try to really, really keep our dynamic range very small, because the more we use, the more data that is going to be compressed or used. And we don't want to do that. So unfortunately, less dynamics, the better. Obviously, it's going to be quieter when, again, a single person is talking. So like if this was a house of worship, a single person praying is going to be very, very quiet as compared to when the whole band is playing. But we have to help compensate for that. So it's not a 15 decibel difference between the person praying and the band playing. Person praying and the band playing. We need to look out for that and compensate for it as best as possible before we send it onto the internet. So there's that. And also on effects. When we're doing streaming, particularly of musical acts, it can be extremely sterile, very dry, not great to listen to. And also the mixed translation is quite different, but to effects specifically, we have to make sure that we add some effects in. If you are having one console that's doing everything, a dab will do you, but it needs to be in there. The mix is going to be different for the stream than it is for front of house. If you have extra effects buses, or if you're using a separate console, then it's always a good idea to make effects especially for the stream, because when we're in a big room, the room is adding so much to what we're hearing. And we spend a lot of time building that space and structuring it, both like physically and like architecturally, but then also in our mix. And we can't just take a carbon copy of that and say, all right, we'll put it on the stream, because it's not going to sound the same. So we need to compensate for that as well. So effects, extremely important in our stream. Just a little bit, you have to really completely build all that space that we built in the venue or in the sanctuary or wherever, again, in the stream. And it's not going to sound the same. It's going to sound different, which is why sometimes people use things like room mics to help kind of capture that room noise without having to use more effects on it. But again, this is, I teach streaming and mixing for this for hours at a time. So if you guys have more questions specifically about mixing for stream, beyond getting it set up and some of the kind of these basic building blocks, please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation with you. So yes, Dustin, that is the link for Ulane. If you guys want to download it and play with it, you're absolutely welcome to. Otherwise, any other questions, anything you guys are unclear about or you want to see more of, or anything like that, I'm here. The floor is open. Office minutes start now.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It's always in the confusing in my brain, and that is on the SQ, when you say you want to gang 9 and 10 outputs as stereo, okay? And when you do that, isn't it true that on my board, I only have to touch the 9 output mix bus to control everything? And 10's really dead now, right? I don't have to set 9 and 10 and move each one when I make adjustments. I only have to do one. That's the part that's so confusing to me.
Yeah, can you explain a little bit? A voice.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Can you explain it just a little bit more so I can make sure I'm under? I don't want to misunderstand what you're asking. So you want to send buses 9 and 10?
So let's say I have a feed that I'm sending off to a camera.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to send a stereo feed from my board.
Mm-hmm.
And so I set up all post fade so that it's equal to whatever I do.
Right.
And so the 9 and 10 is going to come out of the back of my board to the camera or whatever, recording device, whatever.
Yeah.
So the point is, because in the setup, I've designated 9 and 10 to be a stereo pair, right? On my board, I physically have a 9 and a 10 mix output button. So when I set it to a pair, when I operate my mix channel 9, I really don't have to touch 10. That's what because it's because when I touch 9, because it's designated as a stereo pair, it's going to be sent out to, I know it's very virtual, I can send it to anywhere, but I've got it straight
You want your
in my
mix to
head.
be the same for both.
Yeah, so I don't have to adjust 9 and 10. I've been doing it that way because I didn't want to have a problem. But
yeah,
like 9 isn't going to be left and 10 right, correct? It's going to be 9 when I adjust 9, mix 9 on my physical console. Because 9 and 10 are paired, it's going to be it's going to be controlling everything for 9 and 10. That's what I'm trying to.
Okay, so sort of no. I think there's a couple layers to answering this. So one, my suggestion would be making like aux 9. I'm assuming this is an aux stereo.
Yes.
And so you want, that's how I would do it, as I would make aux 9 a stereo aux. So then I'm getting the full regular stereo width, and then I'm just sending 9 to out wherever I'd like and not even bother using 10. I would only start using 10 if I intentionally wanted to make differences to aux 10's mix. Otherwise, whether you're ganging them together or pairing them or however you might phrase it, they will not be precisely the same unless you're sending aux 9 into aux 10, that kind of situation. So in your example you gave, I would make aux 9 stereo and send that 2-track out and not even mess with 10. Is there a reason you want to use 9 and 10?
No, I'm thinking in my mind I don't have to, because I'm confusing the aux channel with the outputs. I keep confusing myself with the outputs because it's very virtual. I can say 9 is the stereo, but I want it to go out to 2 and 3. I mean, I know it's so virtual. I don't go that far because I'll just freaking confuse myself. But so if I say the setup on the board is 9 is stereo, which makes 9 and 10 together.
It won't be 9 and 10. It'll be on some consoles. It does do that. When you make 9 stereo, it's like, oh yeah, like now we're like ganging like 9 and 10 together, and that it doesn't work like that with our stuff. When you make stereo, when you make aux 9 stereo, it becomes a stereo aux. It doesn't absorb the one next to it.
Okay, but because I have it going out to 9 and 10, yeah, see, that's where I get confused. I got the output going to 9 and 10 because it's a stereo output.
Oh, I see. Your outputs are 9 and 10.
Yeah, the outputs are 9 and 10. So I'm using 9 on my board, and 10's really not assigned to anything anymore.
I see. Yeah. So let's say aux 9 is stereo. It will require 2 outputs. You will be using outputs 9 and 10. That is absolutely correct. Yes. Aux 10 though is living off in its own life someplace else. But yeah, that's part of that. What makes it so powerful using the FPGA is that we can assign stuff everywhere, but you also have to like keep track of it. Like, where did you put this? Like, where is it going? I have often found it, now that I'm used to all this like bus structure and moving things around, on the occasion I'm not on an Allen and Heath console, which is fewer and further between these days, I'm like, ew, everything is like permanently matched that way. It's just like you were saying, like aux 9 is coming out of output 9 now, and I cannot change it. And now that bothers me, but I 100% what you're getting. So I can see sometimes I can get a little bit lost in translation.
Like, oh, by the way, I like your shirt. It tells you that you either work for Allen and Heath or Penn and Teller.
Could be
they have
either.
the exact same color and sign logo.
You'll never know. You will never know. Ital asks, all the previous mini masterclasses, are the recordings available anywhere? Yes, I have all of my recordings. If you send me a little email ding, I'll get you the links together. If you want Michael's from his, sending him an email is going to be way easier than, because I'll just have to email him and get them from him. So send him an email if you want to get those. Okay, and then let me read Bill's question here. I am feeding a stereo aux to the stream, but I need to send a mono mix to the hard of hearing headsets local to me. Can I down mix the stereo aux to mono? I feel like you can. There's like, you have to go a weird way around it. I think you can, because that would be a relatively common, and I oddly know exactly how to do it on the HM64, but it may require going into a matrix, using a matrix to do that. So your stereo aux is stereo, of course, and then you may be feeding that into a matrix, which is mono, and then you can send that out, and then it would in fact be a summed mono feed. So, but I also, like, you know, weird stuff could be happening, but I'm sure you know that. All right. Any other questions? This is, there's always lots to ask. I will be here if you guys want to stick around and ask more questions, but otherwise I will set everybody free. Thank you guys for hanging out. I know this is a little bit of a longer one, but this is always a really fun topic to talk about, so I was excited for it. So otherwise, have an excellent rest of your Wednesday. Be sure to check out the All Install conference that Alan and Heath is putting on right now. You can hear me. I'm giving a presentation tomorrow at 7:30 Central, as well as at 10:30 Central, as well as a lot of other topics if you guys are interested in learning more about install specific uses and technologies that Alan and Heath is doing.
Thank you. And I saw your article
Oh,
on
yeah.
what was it? The audio, whatever that magazine was.
Which one? Was it
Something?
Church Sound, Pro Sound Web?
Nope.
Nope.
The other
Okay.
one. But anyway, I saw your article on it.
Oh, Live Sound International, that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm around. I'm an
Cool.
editor with Pro Sound Web, so I'm everywhere. But yeah, it's fun. I'm glad you enjoyed it, William. Okay. Is there a reason we are not using a stereo aux to feed the stream and are doing multi-track instead? No, absolutely not, Brett. Typically for a stream, you would just do the stereo out. It would be very weird to do a complete multi-track to stream. I just want to show you multi-track because that is the more complicated version of it, because there's so many tracks going on. But yeah, same setup though. You can, instead of sending the multi-track out over, you just patch it to do the the mix out. Like you would say, like, let's say from William's example, aux 9 is our broadcast feed. You would just patch aux 9 to go out over USB. So there's that. Okay, setting communications. Yep, no problem, Brent. All right. Any other questions? Hit me with them. I'll hang out here, take a sip, finish up my coffee here. Let's see who's left. Good amount of you guys are still hanging out here. So quiet.